Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the ESSEC MBA Day and Postgrad Career Forum 2021. It is my pleasure to welcome you for this session, How an MBA in Strategy in Digital Leadership Can Pivot Your Career, moderated by Professor Ondrus, Associate Director of ESSEC Global MBA in Singapore and also Associate Dean of Faculty here at ESSEC Asia-Pacific. Joining Professor Ondrus are our esteemed Global MBA alumni, Gautham, Divya, and Jeff. Over to you, Professor.
Okay, thank you, Alia. So welcome everyone this afternoon for this roundtable. So what I'm going to do is we spend about an hour together, and so maybe what I'm going to do first is to talk about why an MBA in strategy and digital leadership. So to understand a bit more why we believe at ESSEC that this specialization is important nowadays. And then we will have a discussion with our alumni to understand a bit better how this program has influenced their careers and what they think about the current environment they're working in. And then at the end, we will have a bit of time for answering a number of questions that you might have. So the idea of having this specialization of strategy and digital leadership comes from the idea or the principle that all industries today, all companies, and all talents that we see are impacted by the digital revolution. So there's kind of no way to escape it. You want to work in finance, you'll have to face somehow digital technology, either in your job, a day-to-day job, or you'll have to face some competitors in fintech. So at the end of the day, many industries are being impacted in a quite, I would say, disruptive way. So we've seen some industries, very traditional ones, that have been changed quite significantly over the last few years. And so what it means is that the next business or next generation of business leaders need to understand what makes companies like Uber or Airbnb, Amazon, Google, Facebook, and the others be so successful at what they do. And so there's a part of it which is about the business model. Another part is about the way they work, the way they think. And so in this program, the idea is to analyze these companies, but also understand how to use what we learn to see how it can impact traditional companies. What are the different opportunities that can be actually coming from new ways of working, and see the competitive advantage that these companies have today, the pure players have, can also be implemented in some traditional companies, but it requires a new way of thinking, shifting business models, innovate in a different way. And so one thing that we also spend quite a bit of time to do, especially in my classes, is to think about what's next. What are the next things that will come? Because at the end of the day, we know what is happening now, what happened in the past, and we can learn from it. But understanding also what are the new trends, what are the new things we see happening in different industries is also important. And for this, we often invite guest speakers, or we have projects with companies that are trying to shift their business model or try to innovate. And that helps also the participants to be hands-on with the current situation that companies are facing when it comes to the digital revolution. So we see also that today, the company I cited before, Uber, Airbnb, Amazon, Grab, and the others are using platform business models. And these platform business models, what's special about them is that many companies, when they implement it, especially at the startup stage, can actually grow very fast and develop the business very quickly. The reason is because platform business models are often highly scalable and asset light. So it means that the cost of innovating, the cost of starting business is very low. Anyone in their garage, the dream of many, can start a company and grow it really fast. And that's because you can leverage on these new business models that are highly scalable. We call them platform business models. And so what we see from small players that are kind of taking advantage of this new business model is that it offers them the possibility to fail fast and pivot fast. So it means that you can test a business idea, see if it works. It doesn't work, you can go to another business idea. So you don't have to invest 6 months of hard work, buying infrastructure, hiring a lot of people before you can test your business idea. In the past, it used to be more like that, right? You want to open a shop, you have to have inventory, you have to have a location, you have to have your suppliers, you have to find clients. So it takes time to grow the business, and testing an idea could be very costly. In the digital space nowadays, you can go very fast and grow fast, but also fail fast, which is a great advantage. So it's important for the next generation of business leaders to be able to take advantage of what now is offered to them in terms of new business practices, to implement them in traditional companies. And so, as you will see, our alumni are not always working for startups or would say new businesses, but maybe what they do is highly influenced by what others are doing outside their own company. So in many industries which were very traditional, they had to reinvent themselves. So it means that any talent nowadays joining a company is required to have a new way of thinking. They cannot just think, I'm going to join a company, stay 20 years in the same company, doing the same job from 9 to 5. It's not the world anymore we live in. Now it's about reinventing yourself very often, and it's reinventing also the business you're in very often. And so the MBA at ESSEC in strategy and digital leadership is designed in some way to prepare the next generation of business leaders to think this way, that the future is liquid, you have to adapt to it, and you have to be prepared to fight or compete against very agile, fast newcomers, new companies, if you work for a big structure, or you need to be able to create your own structure. Many actually of our alumni are also interested to work in small structure. They want to launch their company in the future. And so it's important to understand the business models, the different business practices that are in place in order to do so. But without further ado, I think it's important we actually talk with our distinguished guests today to understand what is kind of the background, where they come from, what the program brought to them. And so maybe before we go into a lot of details, maybe the different guests we have today, the different alumni, could introduce themselves, their names, the company they work for, what kind of function there, maybe what they were doing before, how they ended up coming to the MBA. So maybe we can start with Divya, if you don't mind. You can introduce yourself, and then maybe afterwards we can go to Gautham and Jeff.
Sounds good. Hello, everyone. So my name is Divya. I currently work with Gartner, working with financial services and sales organizations as an account director. And what that really entails is helping these organizations to solve some complex problems that they're currently going through, and partnering with them to see how we as Gartner and advisory can help. I definitely pivoted when I came into the MBA, because prior to this, I was a recruiter in talent acquisition. So it has been a bit of a change and a pivot, but I think it's something that I was looking for. And so I guess now I'm in sales and business development and account management. So yeah, that's me.
Thank you, Divya.
No problem. Gautham, over to you.
Thank you. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Good morning for those joining from somewhere else. My name is Gautham. I'm currently working for a company called Festo. Highly unlikely that many would know that company, because we work mainly B2B. So we do automation solutions and component manufacturing for factory automation. So what that means is anything that you see automated in a factory, it can be in any factory. It could be something that is producing meat all the way up to producing your hand phone, or even mining industry. So it goes throughout the entire spectrum. So we provide solutions where companies can automate any process or any step of manufacturing. What this means is digitalization is a huge part for our business, and it is a big transformation. So I can tell you more about my role before. So I was working in the same company before my MBA, and I moved from the headquarters, which is in Germany, to a sales organization here in Singapore. So the role has been completely different, and the organization is also very different. So I can, in this the next couple of minutes, maybe share eventually how the differences are. But first, let's hear from Jeff.
Hey, thanks. Also, thanks for inviting me to the panel today. It's nice to be here. So I'm Jeff, and I'm a digital strategist at a company called MOI Global. And we are a B2B marketing agency specializing in the tech industry. And we work with clients, actually, many of whom have already been mentioned in this call by Jan. So some of the Amazons, Facebooks, Googles, Grabs of the world. And we just help them connect with the right audiences basically here. And I think what's very pertinent to today's conversation is that the B2B industry as a whole, especially as it relates to marketing, was traditionally very person-to-person, like in-person events led. And so obviously the past year has flipped a lot of that on its head. And a lot of our key clients are really kind of drilling into this question of how do we digitize all of these engagements, and how do we achieve that same reach and maintain those same relationships. Before the MBA though, I was still in marketing communications, but I was mostly in working with SMEs and nonprofits throughout Asia. And so the biggest pivot for me in this case was shifting over to a specifically tech B2B industry, and also the scale and scope of the clients I'm working with. And that's all on my side.
Thank you, Jeff. Okay, great. Thanks. So now we understand a little bit better also in the kind of industries. As you can see, we talked a lot about, I talked a lot about B2C, but B2B is also very important when it comes to digitization or digital transformation. B2B is an important topic. So we shouldn't forget that a lot of companies are actually required to innovate, even though they're in somehow in the supply chain a little bit at the beginning in the manufacturing or in the production of goods or services. They still need to innovate. You don't have to be facing the customer to have to innovate. And so maybe what we can talk about is a little bit about what kind of digital technologies or trends you see that now are impacting your business. So you all work in very different kind of industries. Do you see today something emerging that maybe when you were attending the MBA you heard of, and now you can see it really in action in your respective industries? Is there something that you feel is shifting? Maybe, I don't know if Gautham, you want to talk about how in manufacturing, you're the one who talked about digitalization of processes and so on. Do you see something, now we talk a lot about AI, for example, and automation, machine learning. Does it impact your industry yet?
Yes, definitely. So this is a trend that is very evident in the industry, not just within technology. So I think the biggest impact that digitalization has brought is connectivity. So this is not just between people. So as now we can connect with people much faster than before, but also processes in terms of what you mentioned, financial processes, supply chain processes are all interconnected now, making automation quite possible, not just in a physical sense, but also in a process sense. And the third is also in terms of technology, how machines can interact with each other with minimum human interface or interference is becoming a big trend, and machines are becoming more and more intelligent, even in the most simple form. So this, yes, is definitely clear in the automation world. I can confirm that. But another big takeaway for me from the MBA was I knew a lot of the technologies. I was always following the different kinds of technologies, but the impact that it has on business models and how companies actually are shifting their focus or how they provide value to the customers. This is something I learned through the MBA. How, let's say, just using connectivity, how can you change the approach that you take in order to bring your product to the market, or how do you get it to the majority of the people? So yeah, this is something that was eye-opening, and yeah.
Yeah, thank you for sharing, Gautham. Divya, do you have something to share about it?
I mean, with Gartner, because of the clients that I work with, majority of them are in the financial services industry. So there are a lot of banks and fintechs that I work with. And of course, today, the biggest question that's kind of on everyone's mind is how do we become digital banking leaders? Because of course, that's where customers are, right? And so the question and what the strategy that comes out of that is very important around mobile strategy or developing agile operating models. But then what's important as well is the culture shift internally within organizations that needs to happen in order to embrace kind of some digitalization that goes along with it. So for most banks and fintechs today, that's kind of, and with the pandemic as well, it's just spurred on more conversations in order to become leaders in digital banking. What do they need to do? What do they need to do internally? And then what are the repercussions of it, both internally and externally, with both internal and external stakeholders? So with the MBA, I think what was important was understanding how different facets within an organization can be impacted by others. So digital doesn't just impact marketing. It doesn't only just impact accounting and finance, but you kind of see the trends of how it affects different facets. And I think because you have that understanding through an MBA, it kind of helps you tackle some of these problems with these leaders as well.
Yeah, thank you, Divya. Jeff?
Yeah, sure. I think there are maybe 3 things I can touch on briefly here. Probably the first and foremost is that my title, digital strategist, has largely been kind of questioned lately because today, basically everything we do is somehow related to digital, right? So what does it mean today to be a digital strategist? Back in 2019, it was very clear, right? It was talking about user journeys. It was about connecting business objectives with end user issues and trying to find the solutions in between. But today, everything we do somehow touches one of those digital touch points. And you can't really make the excuse to say like, oh, I'm not digital, right? You have to have some knowledge of that ecosystem there. And then Jan, earlier you were talking about platforms, right? And this is a major topic that we discussed in our MBA. And I think what I've been noticing is that it's starting to blur the lines, right? Because I mean, obviously we have a lot of B2B represented in this conversation, but I think whenever we're navigating a B2B conversation, we also have to be cognizant that they're also, our customers are talking about B2C conversations as well. So we're looking at more of like B2B2C increasingly in prevalence these days. And so as being able to keep those business objectives in focus, regardless of whether or not you're talking about B2B or B2C. And then I think the last point here is really just talking about when I first started working at MOI, a lot of our conversations were talking about how can we reach tech audiences? How can we talk to tech audiences? Because we are a tech marketing agency. But today, a lot of that scope is expanded. It's a lot more interest now. How do we bring tech topics to non-technical audiences and still get them to buy in and change their hearts and minds? And so I think what we're seeing is this democratization, though, of things technical and digital, and trying to translate them into things that resonate with business leaders who don't really have that same kind of technical background. Yeah.
Thank you, Jeff. I find it a bit scary when you say 2019, my title makes sense, but now 2021, now we started questioning digital strategists. So maybe it just tells us somehow how fast things are moving nowadays. And I think COVID is also pushing digitalization even further, right? We understand now that we are able to do a lot more in a digital way, and we have to, right? There's no escape. Not only because competition is telling you that you need to do it, but it's a question of survival. A lot of the companies which were highly dependent on physical interactions realized with COVID-19 that without being more digital, they cannot operate the business. So now things are shifting even faster. Companies are getting more equipped for it. The strategies are elaborated also this way. We can see there was a boom of e-commerce, and some companies made a lot of money during that time by exploiting their online capabilities, and some were just waiting there, wondering what to do. And so those who have waited too long probably disappeared. The ones who have shifted, hopefully for them, they've been able to survive and thrive by now. But we can see that's at the level of the company. But it's the same for workers, right? If you think about it, a lot of the paper-based kind of processes that we have cannot be done anymore. So we need to reinvent the jobs we do. Maybe our titles, as Jeff was saying, need to evolve also, not just because of the trends and how the interactions with the industry works, but maybe just because the job doesn't make sense anymore. So Gautham was talking about automation, removing human beings as much as possible from different processes. And so what do you think are the skills that you acquired during the GMBA that you will keep? So some of the skills hopefully will not get obsolete too fast, but what skills do you think could help you to be more relevant for a longer time? Or what kind of skills do you think you should still acquire? I mean, we talk about lifelong learning, so I believe that in the respective jobs you're doing, you will have to keep learning. I don't believe that because you graduated from the MBA, that's it. Until retirement age, there will be nothing to learn. But what do you think at this point you feel is a skill that was important to acquire during the program, and eventually even now, other skills that you feel are important to be able to stay relevant in your current position, or eventually if you want to change jobs? What do you think is important in the industry you're in, or how do you see the skill set that you have now being relevant and eventually preparing you for the future? So I don't know if Gautham, do you want to start, or maybe we can go first to Divya? So we change a little bit.
I think Jeff raised his hand that he was excited about this question.
Well, yeah, mostly
Okay.
I just don't want you guys to steal my thunder, so I'm gonna try and go first as quickly as possible.
Okay, so Jeff, maybe you can do first, and then we turn the other way around. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I think when it comes to the MBA, I remember, even though we talked a lot about digital, we talked a lot about business models, but at the end of the day, though, we always kept user centricity in mind, making sure that we stay hyper-focused on what is the business problem and how does that actually relate to the end user or the customer or the person behind that, right? Because that's what we're really trying to solve for. And I think, especially because things are kind of turned on its head these days, and a lot of the pre-existing structures are either eroding or being challenged altogether. There's a lot more uncertainty and ambiguity in play now. So being able to stay hyper-focused on asking the right questions on how is this impacting the end user and how is this going to contribute to the business objective is probably the most valuable thing I gained from the MBA, and just being able to connect those dots. That's me. Yeah.
Thank you. Divya, you want to jump in?
Sure. I was like, Jeff, he has just the perfect answer ready to go. I think, honestly, there are obviously a lot of things that I took away from the GMBA, but probably the most pertinent that sticks with me is, it really finessed my ability for critical thinking, having to understand, like I've said before, how different functions work in an organization in unison to, help an organization stay relevant, progressive, profitable, but your ability to then take this critical thinking skill into a variety of different roles and different functions, probably was finessed by the GMBA. But the critical thinking also comes from people and peers that challenge you in the program, because we come from such diverse and differing backgrounds, that your echo chamber that you've built till this point in your life is definitely broken down because you meet so many different people of such different walks of life, which only harnesses kind of more ability to think critically.
Okay, thank you. Got thinking. Gautham?
Yeah. So just to correct a bit, I did talk about automation and how we are trying to remove human interference, but this is more for the redundant tasks. But at the end of the day, it's always a balance. We need to have both amount of automation, but we also need the creativity, and we need the humans to actually do the actual thinking. And there, I would like to, I completely agree with what Jeff mentioned. A primary focus of a business is to actually think about who you're giving value to, so the user. So user centricity is something that one has to definitely keep in mind, and this cannot be automated. This is, especially in a dynamic world where expectations are changing, people are changing, behavior is changing so quickly. It's very important to remain dynamic as well as a business, as a organization as well. So this is not just for external stakeholders or customers, but also within an organization. So Divya mentioned the different facets of a company. And here it's also important to understand what the different facets are trying to achieve. And if you understand what they're trying to achieve, then you can also help within the organization to support each other. Or if you're talking to other external customers, it's easier to communicate to them to show how you are giving them value, because you are understanding their problem from a very fundamental level. And this is something which requires a lot of detailed understanding and analysis, which is a skill that you need to acquire in order to mold yourself or adapt to this transforming environment that we are in.
Yeah, thank you. I want to bounce on this. The current situation now, I mean, it started before COVID-19. This transformation, the way companies have to evolve. Now that we are in this period of time that is very uncertain, we don't know how long this crisis will continue. I'm sure that individually or even within your companies, you faced a lot of challenges, either internally dealing with colleagues or doing your job or interfacing with your customer. So during these difficult times, I bet you have faced very different challenges in nature. What have you been able to learn from these challenges, and how maybe the skills that you acquired, not just during the program, but even after the program, right after, because you finished before, I mean, in some way, not really actually, COVID-19. So what could be the learnings of this period of time for you in terms of, you collaborating with your colleagues, dealing with your job, maybe seeing your industry evolving also. So who wants to start? Divya, you want to start?
I'm happy to. I think it was it was pretty challenging to start a completely new role remotely because of the pandemic, and kind of and obviously we couldn't go into the office or meet colleagues or create that repertoire with clients. And so I think what was important and relevant to understand through the MBA as well is that you need to survive and thrive in uncertainty no matter what happens. The last couple of years, if they've taught you anything, is probably that we can't predict about what's going to come next and what's going to happen next. And so your ability to be confident in your own thinking, and to kind of be confident in your own ability to thrive is very important, considering we really just cannot control a lot of external factors. And so I think having that understanding and that confidence to be able to thrive in new settings, and kind of go with spontaneity is very important.
Yeah, thank you, Divya. Jeff or Gautham?
I can go ahead.
To go?
So as you mentioned, Divya, the biggest difference was starting a new role from a remote environment, right? Building relationships on a digital platform is something completely different from a human interaction that we are used to from before. And this is something I guess we are all learning or trying to master, but it is a challenge, but it is possible. That's what we have learned in the last 1 year. It is possible to build relationships online. It is possible to communicate and be efficient online. It has both pros and cons, but I guess we were forced to do something in the last 1 year, but I think we are going to learn from what we have experienced now. So in the future, definitely we would never go back to what it was before. We can somehow use what we have gained from this necessity in the recent year, and behavior is also going to be molded based on that. So another difference that I would like to point out is in the business, right? Before B2B was a very it was more like personal relationships or connections that you make with your clients, and you go on from there. But now with the B2C shifting to a whole different environment, let's say using Amazon as a partner for your shopping requirements, where you see everything on demand, you can get something in your hands within a day. Expectations have changed completely. And it's the same in the B2B as well. We have transformed how people need certain things at a given time. So now nobody wants to go through the whole quotation process where you discuss for months and you negotiate a certain deal. Rather, they would like to see what the value is right now, get the package and get it delivered to their doorstep the next day. So this is the expectation also in the B2B world. And yeah, so it's changing quite quickly, and I think digitalization has a big impact, and you can see behavioral changes in many aspects. So,
yeah, no, that's great. Actually, and I think what I have in mind is very similar, right? Because it has to do with kind of the escalation of customer or user experiences. I mean, they always tend to be one step ahead of what's currently on offer or available, right? And customers can sometimes articulate very clearly what they want the next evolution of the product or the service to be. But a lot of times they know it in their head or they know it intuitively, but they don't have the right words for it. But historically, though, it's always kind of followed a path or a progression or a certain pace or cadence of transformation. But I think what COVID-19 has effectively done, though, is broken that stride entirely, right? And so a lot of my job has to do with, figuring out how to deliver memorable experiences to our target audiences, which became extremely challenging when our audience's expectations of valuable experiences was flipped on its head basically overnight, right? Everything shifted to digital. And so suddenly people in the industry were like, I need to nurture my audiences. I can't do it at physical events anymore. I need some kind of a tool that will enable me to have much more interactive live sessions online now, right? But especially early on in COVID, a lot of these tools weren't available. They weren't very mature yet. Companies were racing to get these things together. But in that interim period, though, I remember, I think maybe this is where like my previous startup experience kind of showing through, is because we were basically jimmying together solutions with existing products and services in different combinations, and using that resourcefulness to deliver more unique or memorable experiences. And so for me, I think it's that just the way that customer expectations have just transformed because of COVID. So as Gautham was saying, and then what I think one of the ways that an MBA or, has really benefited is just being able to pivot on your toes, stay resourceful, even when the tools don't necessarily exist yet, and still be able to deliver on those business objectives.
Yeah, I find it striking how the B2B business is being impacted by B2C behaviors, in a sense that individuals are experiencing services in a different way. As Gautham was explaining, we buy on Amazon or other online shops. We have this instant gratification that we experience on a daily basis nowadays using mobile apps and so on. And B2B was not used to that. it was this lengthy processes, this relationship you have to build, you have to see the clients many times, exchanging before you commit to anything. But now with the digital processes, you just sign a document online and the contract is done. And so interestingly, Zoom is also making things possible without traveling. You can see people more often, maybe in a quicker way. There's a Zoom fatigue for sure. People are getting frustrated with that. As Divya was saying, building relationship, especially when you start a new job and you don't see people physically speaking, it is challenging. So MBA or not, that's not really relevant. I think it's just that the workplaces have changed, and working from home. There was recently in the local newspaper here, Straits Times, they were talking about how there was a survey if people wanted to go back to the workplace, and it seems that many people are very happy at home for many different reasons from the survey. But it's interesting to see how we are changing very fast our habits. Before, staying home was not really the things that people were happy about. Companies were investing massively in their workplaces to make them attractive, to make sure that they're conducive of exchanges and collaboration in general. And now people are just home in the office, in their living room, maybe in cafes to work, and they seem to be quite satisfied with it. And so we see this shift in terms of how we work in B2C, B2B, the way we experience our own relationship in the workplace. And so one of the things that I wanted to talk about from there is that, as you know, well, in Singapore, we live a life with constraints, but kind of a normal life compared to other countries, I would say. We can still come on campus. So the GMBA this year was able to be an in-class experience, while many MBAs around the world are just online. And so we realized that building this relationship is important within the program. So you're talking about the workplace. It's for sure something that we see also between the participants when they come to this program. If they had to just meet online, they wouldn't get the same experience. Even though now there's a trend of wanting to take some courses online, click and watch a video and learn online at a different pace. But the networking, the human exchange is something that is very valuable. And so I wanted to talk to you, or at least I wanted to ask you, the different experiences, memorable experiences that you had during the program that you still remember. I bet they're linked to some of the social events or maybe activities that you had in the program. Maybe it could be my classes, I don't know, maybe. So could you please share with us what are the different, I would say, not takeaways, but I would say more about experiences of the program, and what did you appreciate the most? What will you remember, in years to come? Since Jeff finished a long time back, maybe he can start.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. So when it comes to the experiences, Divya had mentioned earlier, sort of how you get to refresh your echo chamber, or like your group of peers, basically. And I thought one of the most refreshing things from the MBA was being surrounded by people from all walks of life who are not afraid to tell you that, what you're saying doesn't make sense, or maybe you need to think about this a little bit deeper. But then also being able to walk away from those conversations and still feel like you are correct, but you just need to find better ways to support your argument. I think that was probably one of the most valuable professional takeaways. But from just a personal experience wise, I loved the opportunities that ESSEC gave in terms of exposure to new companies. I remember we visited basically the Amazon of Africa on our trip to Morocco, and I thought that was just eye-opening. It was really, I guess, unique, because we're always talking about the Amazon, but it's so interesting to see the different ways that can be localized in different regions of the world, and how that can impact, what kinds of things they have on the radar in terms of digitization. Yeah. So yeah, let's go with those two.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah.
Maybe Divya, you want to jump in?
Exactly. I mean, similar to what Jeff said, obviously, I think the way your peers challenge you in this program is pretty valuable, and how you walk away from that, how you respond to how you respond to that challenge is pretty exciting. I think the other thing that's also very important to understand about our MBA program is that it is a smaller cohort size. And what that really means is you get to kind of know people at a deeper level, whether it's your professors, whether it's guest lecturers, or even the career services team. Everyone kind of seems like a support system for you in order for you to do well and thrive post MBA. So I think having that smaller cohort size was invaluable to me, because I really was able to get to know so many different people on not just a surface level. So that was pretty invaluable. Go.
Thank you. Yeah, Gautham.
Yeah. So Professor Yan, you started off with the online courses versus interactive courses, right? So I feel online courses are great for a certain purpose. If you're doing a technical course, yeah. But what the MBA does is it brings people together. It's bringing people from a diverse background. It's not one of those courses where you go through one set of path. Let's say in order to do engineering, you go to science school, and then you meet the same kind of people over and over again until you do engineering and they graduate. But whereas MBA brings people from various backgrounds, various industries, puts them in one class, and then discuss the same issue from different perspectives. This is the value that I see in an MBA program. And I think ESSEC does that pretty well. In both the campuses, you interact with completely different kind of people, especially since ESSEC offers different tracks. You are engaging with people who have different aspirations as well for the future and different backgrounds from the past. And this was the best thing that happened for me during the program. And in terms of the actual program, one of the coolest things, or the best experience, was a business simulation game that we did. And Divya and I, we were on the same team actually. So this simulation game showed how all the courses that we did in the entire program brings it all together. So in this simulation, we were actually one company, each one responsible for one of the facets of the organization. And you make decisions together. It's a 3-day program. There are fights, there are arguments, gets heated up. But then at the end of the day, you're okay. You go have a beer, and it's the same like in real life. You have heated arguments in the workplace. You have good discussions, but you have to really understand where people are coming from, and then that helps you to formulate your arguments as well better. So this is something that I would definitely remember, and actually did help me quite a bit during my internship that I did right after my MBA program. So I really did implement a lot of things that we learned during that business game.
Thank you for sharing. I think we have time now for some questions from the audience. I don't know if Alea can come back, or how we can get these questions. I don't have access, especially from here.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Professor Yan. Yes, amazing panel discussion just now. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to write it down at the Q&A function located at the bottom of your screens. If not, please feel free to reach out to us as well. The session will be recorded, and we will be sharing it with all of the attendees. If you have any last words or message, Professor Yan, to our attendees and future participants, please feel free to share them along. Thank you.
Sure. While people are typing questions, so I'm really grateful that we had 3 alumni coming and sharing their current jobs and their careers, what they're doing now. I hope that they're happy, but they seem happy about what they're doing now. And I remember them in class, and I see them now, and I'm quite proud, I have to say, to see them speaking so well about what they do. And it's always nice to see them come back to ESSEC and see how they've been doing in these difficult times. Also, it was not a given. There's many challenges beyond just COVID-19. These past years were not easy for anyone, and so seeing them thriving in their respective careers and be able to come back and talk to us about what they do is always a great pleasure. And it's something that's beyond the program is the relationship we build. And I think we spend a lot of time, if there's something to remember from this afternoon interaction, is that the relationship we build are for a long time. Even Gautham was explaining that during the class, things can be a bit heated. There could be some debates, but at the end of the day, diversity is also what makes it richer, and that's what Jeff was saying, right? You come with your ideas. People think that they're stupid. It requires you to think more how to sell your ideas, or was it a good idea in the first place? And I remember Jeff was very creative in all his projects and slides. So I'm sure the group had to deal with a lot of debates on what slide to include or not. But at the end of the day, I'm sure that by coming together, as Gautham was saying, if you want to learn a technical topic and go online and learn a coding language or so, you can do it by yourself. While a lot of the topics we have at ESSEC or during the MBA, they require a lot of discussions and exchange, and you learn almost more from the peers and the interactions than the professor themselves, because at the end of the day, it's about this diversity of participants that makes the program so valuable. People come from different backgrounds when it comes to their education background, but maybe nationalities are different also. Here we have different nationalities around the table, so it's very international. Different genders. We have at the same time the interest, the passions. So there's a lot to learn from each other, and that can only happen in class and during projects. So there's a lot of group projects that we put in place also for this reason: how to learn with people you like and you dislike. Because at the end of the day, you don't choose with who you're going to work in the future. So you better manage this relationship, even though you feel like, I don't really want to work with Jeff, he's too creative for me, he goes in every direction. But at the end, once you learn how to work with Jeff, you might be actually very happy at the end. So, and I think that's what happened. I've been at ESSEC for a long time, and I see that happening all the time. People are complaining when we make the groups, I don't want to work with this person because we worked on another project. And at the end of the day, they become best friends after the project because they realize that by starting to work together and understanding each other better, you can build this very strong relationship. So anyway, I don't know if we have questions, Alea, to answer already, because I see the time.
Yes, so we have two questions coming in. So first one is from Kirti. Is there any difference between Singapore and France campus in terms of teaching style and projects?
So I can answer. So it's because the situation is that yes and no. The professors are different because we do not fly professors back and forth to teach for the two campuses. I think Divya and Gautham, actually, both of you, I don't think, Jeff, you stayed 100% in Singapore, or you went to France also? Okay, so they all experienced both, actually. So they can answer also quickly this question. But in principle, the topics are supposed to be similar in the same tracks, and the experience of the projects are similar in some way. Maybe the topics could be a bit different, but the nature of the project are the same. Now, the experience, of course, if you take classes in Singapore, you might actually be exposed more to Asian-centric topics. When we invite guest speakers, for example, most guest speakers are active in this region, while the one in France or Europe will be more focused on Europe. So that's one of the big difference, I would say. Now, in terms of the cohort, there could be, I would say, different, but it depends on the year, different composition also. Maybe in Europe, might be more Europeans or Westerner, but in Singapore, more Asians. So it all depends. I think that's not 100% true every year. So it depends on the cohort. But maybe someone who spent time in, Divya, you want to say something about your experience in France?
Yeah, sure. So I think one of the biggest differences is in France, you have the luxury track for the MBA participants. So with the luxury track, they are in some of our foundational classes. So we do have similar classes together. So some of the projects can be a little bit, some of the projects will have more people on them just because of the additional group and additional track. And the projects, like you said, Professor Jan, the idea behind the projects are similar and the assignments are similar, but of course the centricity changes because of region that we're in. But I think they both have very unique offerings for each campus. And if you have the chance, I would recommend going to both to experience the full ESSEC experience and the bi-campus experience, which was great. And I think Gautham can attest to that too. I think we both had a great time in Paris.
He's smiling, so I don't know if he wants to share or just happy with what Divya said.
I was just thinking about the good times. Yeah, so the experience, I think it's definitely different, mainly because of what Divya mentioned. The luxury track adds a complete different spin to these discussions. Also, they make sure that in the first term, at least, you have a mixed group. So every project that you do will have 2 from luxury and 2 from the strategy. So that really puts a different spin to the results that you bring up in assignments. And this can be for the foundational courses like finance, but also for other courses that you do. And this, I think, really was eye-opening. But that being said, it doesn't mean that in Singapore is different. Here you have a different kind of exposure. And also, I think in Singapore, you're a bit more closer towards the industry compared to Paris. You have more company interactions in Singapore because it's basically how the certain courses are structured. So Professor Jan, he brings in guest speakers for every lecture for one of his programs, which was which is a bit different from how it's done in Paris.
Thank you, Gautham. Jeff, you want to add something about your experience, also your bi-campus experience?
Actually, I realized my nodding and shaking of my head was maybe a bit cryptic. I actually didn't go to France. I was just for the trip.
Yeah, the trip. That's what I was thinking.
Oh, okay.
But
yeah. No, the trip was great. It was 2 weeks total between Morocco and Paris, and the week in Paris was pretty intensive because that was when we did our pitch competition. But that was great exposure to a lot of different companies, and we got to work with the students over in the Paris campus. Yeah, it was a whirlwind of a week, super intense, but it was great experience and great exposure. So yeah, I would do it all over again, I think.
Yeah. Thanks for all the smiles. Yes, Alia, another question?
Yes, maybe we can take one last question before we end this session. Right. So for the 3 amazing alumni that we have for today, what was your biggest practical takeaway of doing the strategy and digital leadership track in Singapore? Anyone can start. Divya, ladies first.
I think, thanks, Alea. I think what Gautham said, we did have a lot of, again, going back to cohort size and the amount of hyper-focused attention you can get from the career and services team here is pretty relevant for meeting different companies and getting connected to different referrals within industries that you're interested in. So for me, that was pretty much the biggest practical takeaway. I found my job currently because of referrals within ESSEC and through through different professors and adjunct professors. So I think having that proximity to meeting different people within the industries is extremely relevant and pertinent for kind of Singapore campus.
I'll go next. Yeah. So for me, in addition to what Divya's already said, especially for those who are interested in pivoting to maybe a different industry or even a different side of the business, I think just the exposure to the range of industries and business challenges is probably one of the most valuable things that I had. It's decades worth of experience basically instilled into a year. That you're leveraging from your classmates, your professors, your guest speakers, etc. And that's definitely not something that I could have achieved on my own in that same amount of time. And being able to navigate sometimes very complex questions or conversations just about what businesses are doing and what they're trying to achieve and the ways that they're doing it. Yeah, I think that was probably the most tangible takeaway for me.
So the most practical takeaway, definitely for me was, if you're looking for a job, if you're looking for, especially a job that was not similar to what you were doing before, don't apply through job portals. Talk to people, communicate, network, leverage conversations, not just to actually land a job, but also to inform yourself. This really opens up conversations or even ideas that you might not have thought that is a possibility for yourself. It shows you different career paths that you could take, and which is something which is not normal before. Before, what you did was you look at openings and then you try to fit yourself to those openings, which is not the case anymore. Now you make opportunities for yourself. And this is a very big practical takeaway for me.
Thank you very much. I think that's an important advice.
And if I have to push that further, another thing I really remember from my entrepreneurship class is another professor, Jan, telling us, if you ever start a company, the first thing you do is just like how you go grocery shopping. We need to check what you have in your cabinet, in your refrigerator, before you actually go out to find more stuff. It's the same with job hunting or with anything in life. You need to check what you have in your refrigerator. What are the skills? What are the networks? What are the contacts that you have? Make use of all of those and don't think it's too little, because a lot of times we feel like we don't have enough, but there is a lot that we already have, which we can leverage to advantage. So yeah, that's the expansion.
Thank you. Thank you, Gautham. So, yeah, Alea?
Fantastic. I was about to say fantastic, everyone. Thank you so much, Professor Jan, Gautham, Divya, and Jeff for spending your Saturday with us. We really appreciate it. And next up, we have our panel discussion for MBA versus Executive MBA. Which one is right for you? So simply just click on the link that we have shared on the chat function if you want to see the upcoming sessions that we have lined up. Once again, Professor Jan, thank you so much, Gautham, Divya, and Jeff.
Thank you for joining us. It was a pleasure to see you all.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great Saturday.
Yes, happy Easter.
Thank you.
Happy Easter, yeah.
Bye, everyone.
Enjoy your long
Thank you.
weekends. Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.